I've been married for 7 years to my 33-year-old wife, and we don't have any children. 2 years ago, she started a new job and was doing well. At first, she would mention a coworker she didn't like, calling him an a-hole. But her attitude gradually changed, and she talked about him less and less. Despite our marriage not being perfect, I've always trusted her, and we usually got along just fine. Jump ahead to about a month ago, when I noticed some changes in her behavior. She was texting more often and keeping her phone close at all times. Her evenings and weekends suddenly became busier. She grew distant, and she avoided any affection. She also started lying about weird things. The final straw was when she packed for a business trip, including a much more revealing swimsuit than she'd ever worn before. When I asked about it, she claimed she ordered it online, but I knew that wasn't true. She ended up taking it with her on the trip anyway. While she was away, I decided to investigate. Throughout our entire relationship, I'd never gone through her things, but I was fed up with the lies. In her work bag, I found a caricature-like drawing of her on hotel paper, and next to it was a post-it note with directions to a male coworker's house written in her handwriting. Checking our bank statements showed several instances where she claimed to be working late, but she was actually dining at different restaurants in the city. As a professional private investigator, I have no problem digging into someone's privacy when there's a good reason to be suspicious. I legally placed a GPS tracker in her car, which is registered under my name in our state. When she came back from her trip, she mentioned going to a coffee shop on Sunday and running some errands. But the GPS showed her car never went near a coffee shop. Instead, she returned home carrying a Chipotle cup. The following Tuesday, she said she would be attending a company dinner and working late, but the GPS indicated she left work at 3:20 p.m., and stayed at a restaurant until 9 p.m. The big issue happened on the next Saturday. We had plans to watch my niece play tennis at 8 a.m., but she insisted on driving separately so she could go to a coffee shop to work afterward. I told her to have a nice day and went to my car. Using the GPS, I saw that she drove straight to a Comfort Inn motel. I arrived at the motel and parked in a nearby lot to make sure she was inside. Then, I called her from the lobby and asked her how the coffee shop was. She responded that it was fine, asked why I was asking. I simply told her to come downstairs so we could talk. When she came down, she said, "It's not what you think," explaining that the coworker has had issues with other girls in the past and always works from hotel rooms. She insisted they didn't do anything physical, but I told her to get out of my car. After I left, she called me about 50 times, and when I finally picked up, I said if she lied even once, I would hang up immediately. She admitted they kissed once, about 5 months ago, but said it was a mistake and didn't mean anything. She kept repeating that they were just working together. When I asked how many times they had met at hotels, she confessed it was around 10 times over the past 9 months. I asked about the previous Tuesday, and she became defensive, insisting she was at work until the company dinner. When I confronted her again, she came to the house while I was packing up my belongings and my dog. She stayed in the driveway, crying and apologizing, but whenever I asked her questions, she would get defensive, saying it wasn't good for us to discuss these things. She's lied about small details, and when I called her out, she accused me of trapping her. She still insists it wasn't a romantic relationship, claiming they were just good friends who sometimes talked about our problems. She admitted to texting him and then deleting the texts, saying they weren't romantic but could be considered flirty. She mentioned he helped her deal with depression and challenges at work. Now I find myself stuck, trying to uncover the truth. But even if I do, I'm not sure how I could move past what I already know. Am I losing it? We're a month past D-Day. I spoke with her last night. Here's the scoop. I asked about her interactions with the other man over the past 4 weeks. She mentioned he had no idea about my confrontation at the D-Day hotel, as she hadn't discussed it with him, considering it a personal marital issue. When I suggested she stop non-work conversations with him, she said she was scaling back. That phrase set me off. She believed she needed to gradually reduce contact instead of going no contact, arguing that since he didn't know I had caught her, tapering off was the right approach. Then, she lied about a trivial detail, and I was sure she wasn't telling the truth. I confronted her, but she adamantly denied it. I let it go, adding it to the growing pile of unresolved problems. Despite claiming to be tapering off social talk with him, I planted a voice recorder in the house and left. The next day, I listened back. She and the other man had talked for well over an hour across at least 2 calls. The recording stopped in the afternoon, so I assumed they spoke more later. I didn't catch many specifics, but a few incriminating remarks stood out. They discussed our marriage's state, something she claimed he didn't know about, and a secret phone app to avoid detection. She insulted me for being late to breakfast, and they shared plenty of laughs. It had been a long time since I'd heard her that animated, like when we first dated. I confronted her, and while she admitted to some things, she denied others. I'd reached a point where I didn't care anymore. I was already set to meet a divorce lawyer that morning. During the past fortnight, I had maintained no communication with my spouse. She recently reached out, sending a text wanting to talk. I responded by saying that I'd only discuss things if she came clean about everything first. She claimed to be aware of a wiretap on her phone, which wasn't true, but I let her think it was. I told her I already knew all the details but needed to hear them from her. Eventually, she agreed to meet up to reveal everything. When we finally sat down, she confessed. Her involvement with the other man was indeed intimate, lasting for the last 6 months. She admitted to booking a hotel room for a rendezvous the day before our anniversary and confirmed they kept in touch after discovery, claiming he was helping her manage my questions. She also asserted that the affair had truly ended for good and expressed a desire to fix our marriage. This confession came 6 long weeks after I caught her in the hotel. While she contends that she always intended to come clean to minimize the hurt, I suspect it was my persistence that forced her hand. The damage done during those 6 weeks seemed insurmountable. We eventually ended up divorcing. I took my time before making that decision, and in hindsight, I wish I hadn't waited so long. My ex-wife expressed a desire to stay together, though her reasons were never clear to me. The lies and gaslighting she engaged in made reconciliation impossible. Going through the divorce was one of the toughest experiences of my life. Throughout our marriage, I was completely committed. I wasn't perfect, but I truly loved my wife and envisioned a lifetime together. I made significant efforts on multiple occasions to keep her happy. Now, with some distance from that relationship, I can see it for what it really was: a one-sided situation where a narcissistic person drained the energy and goodness out of someone who cared. Towards the end, I started to believe I was a worthless partner. She would frequently undermine my profession, my personality, and my appearance. However, since the divorce, my business has thrived, and I've dated women I once thought were out of my league. I had always felt unattractive, partly due to her influence, but now I've been approached by gorgeous, much younger women at bars. I've had a few wonderful relationships with amazing women, and while these relationships ended amicably due to compatibility issues, they helped me realize just how terrible of a partner my ex-wife truly was. Now maintain no contact with my ex and rarely think about her. The divorce became contentious because she believed I was taking too much money, even though I accepted less than 50% to ensure a smoother process without disrupting businesses and retirements. It was astounding to see her complain about the settlement after everything she did. It only reinforced that I made the right choice to distance myself from the toxic situation as quickly as possible. I did lose some friends during the divorce, but I'm not bothered by it. Most took my side, and I have no concerns about those who didn't. It made it easier to let them go. The hardest part was losing my in-laws, as I genuinely cared about some of them, but I understand their position. I sent enough correspondence to the wife of the affair partner to ensure she was aware of what had happened, but she never responded. I respect her decision. For anyone going through a similar nightmare, here's some advice. Separate yourself from the situation to gain clarity and avoid manipulation. Seek professional help. Surround yourself with supportive friends and family. Make healthy choices. Stay active. Limit substance use. And prioritize self-care. Listen to advice, but remember to make your own decisions, as it's your life. There were some incredibly dark days after discovering the affair, but after the initial heartache, this period has turned into the best time of my life. I find genuine happiness every day. If you're facing something similar and need advice from someone who's been through it, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to help. All right. That's the end of this story. Now, let's move on to another exciting one, Story 2. Around a month ago, I discovered that my 2 children were not biologically mine. They were the result of affairs my soon-to-be ex-wife had. I had been suspicious for a while, wondering if either of them was actually my child. 6 years ago, when my son was born, I was overjoyed. I had married my best friend, and we welcomed our first child. Everything seemed perfect at the time, but as he got older, I began to have doubts about his paternity. He didn't resemble me at all, and with time it became more apparent that he looked nothing like I would have expected. I didn't want to let appearances alone drive my suspicions. as I'm not the kind of person to jump to conclusions over something so superficial. But then there was my wife's behavior, which kept raising red flags. Her stories didn't always add up when she went out. There were mysterious gaps in her schedule. She kept me away from her coworkers, and a close friend had accused her of flirting with their partner. As time went on, especially after our son was born, it seemed like her lies were slowly catching up to her. And yet, despite her deceit, I held on. I still loved her, no matter how foolish that may sound. Each time she was caught in a lie, she managed to convince me that despite her dishonesty, she truly loved me. I believed, for a long while, that she wasn't capable of being unfaithful. Then, last year, she got pregnant again. I clung to a thin thread of hope that this time the child would be mine. However, when our daughter was born, it was clear that she was multi-ethnic. I refused to sign the birth certificate and insisted on a paternity test. When the results confirmed what I had feared all along, neither child was biologically related to me, it felt like the ground fell out from beneath me. That same day, I filed for divorce and walked away from the family I thought I had. Leaving wasn't an easy choice. I knew it would deeply impact her son's life since, to him, I was the only father he had ever known. I had poured everything I had into being a good dad to him over those years. Whenever I saw him, I was filled with a sense of revulsion, not towards him, but towards my wife and myself for ignoring my instincts for so long. The entire situation made me sick, knowing that 6 years of my life were now reduced to nothing more than a facade. Since leaving, many have labeled me a monster for abandoning the boy. My ex has been using him as a pawn, having him call me late at night, crying and begging for his dad to come back. When I was packing up my belongings, she even paraded him into the room to demonstrate the damage she claimed I was causing. Whether online or in person, the judgment is the same. People insist that I'm still his father despite not being biologically related. It feels like my own feelings don't matter to most people. Only my parents have been supportive, while my siblings criticize me for walking away from a child who isn't mine. I understand the situation isn't his fault. The boy did nothing wrong. The man he called his father for his entire life just disappeared. But why am I expected to keep pretending everything is fine and disregard my own emotions? I was never truly his father, even if I loved him like one. Staying would only foster resentment and self-loathing for not taking back control of my life. He isn't my child, and while it's not his fault, I can't be held responsible for him anymore. Addressing some of the questions I've received, here are a few clarifications. Some people have suggested that I never really cared about the boy, or that I was just waiting for a way out. It's tough to convey emotions in a text like this, especially when it's overshadowed by feelings of anger and betrayal. People can think whatever they want about me. I've hired legal representation so I won't have to pay child support or alimony. Lastly, I've seen suggestions that I should stay in her son's life as his father, but I just can't. While I hold nothing against the boy, I have been lied to, manipulated, and used by someone who dragged her children into her mess. He's innocent in all of this, but it doesn't change the reality that I have to face. Don't hate him. In fact, I feel a deep sadness when I think about his situation. But when I look at him, all I see are 6 years of deception, 6 years of being taken advantage of. I can't just put my resentment aside and pretend our relationship wasn't a lie orchestrated by his mother. This is the harsh truth I'm left with, and it wouldn't be fair to him or myself to continue living in that lie. For those who think this post is fake because of some legal reasons, I won't say where I live, but I am legally challenging paternity. This may not satisfy everyone who thinks they're a legal expert, but I'm taking the proper steps. This will be my final update before I step away from this distraction I've created for myself. First, I want to express my sincere gratitude to everyone who reached out with kind words, whether in the comments, DMs, or chat. You've brought some light to my days, which hasn't happened in a while. I wish I could respond to each of you personally, but please know that I truly appreciate your support. Second, I've noticed a lot of strong criticism regarding the language I used to describe my soon-to-be ex. I want to clarify that I'm currently in one of the darkest times of my life, filled with overwhelming anger towards the woman who has deeply hurt me. Was the language I used inappropriate and offensive? Yes, I acknowledge that, but I won't apologize for it because what I shared reflects the raw reality I'm facing right now. It's an unfiltered expression of emotions from a flawed person. I'm not here to make anyone hate women or to spread a misogynistic message about women being terrible. That's not my intention, nor is it the point of this post. I understand why some people took issue with the word I used, and I accept that as valid criticism. Today, I came here to find an outlet, a place where I could vent, grieve, and deal with the complex and intense emotions that have consumed me over the past month. I needed a space to speak my mind freely, and I found that here. Surprisingly, it helped, and for that, I thank all of you. All right, here is a third story. We were both 22 when we started spending time together again after college. Initially, I was more of a friend to her until we ended up in the same city and I asked her out. We dated for 9 months, during which I felt she could be the one for me. However, she gradually became distant, with no clear reason. She wasn't looking for anything serious back then, as she had plans to pursue a master's degree in the US, while I wanted a committed relationship. She thought my desire for commitment came across as neediness, and that I should just appreciate the chance to date her. She was quite popular and attractive, which made me feel insecure, especially since I was still working on my confidence at that time. Despite breaking up, we stayed in touch because of mutual friends. Between the ages of 23 and 27, she dated various men, and when she was 27 to 28, I heard her parents tried to arrange a marriage for her, but it didn't work out. Eventually, she reached out to me again, and we ended up dating. Early on, she asked if I was interested in something serious, and I confirmed that I never dated casually, but also added that I wasn't in a rush to get married. I even suggested that if she felt pressured to marry soon, she should consider other options. The 6 months we dated were honestly some of the best times I've had. Our intimacy was fantastic, and she was incredibly accommodating and loving. When the topic of marriage came up, I told her I wasn't ready, especially after seeing some friends experience divorce. She accused me of being dishonest about my intentions, but I showed her the messages where I had said I wanted a serious relationship without rushing things. She argued that we had been dating for more than a year in total, and that she wanted to settle down. From that point, things started to grow tense. I would send her sweet goodnight texts, but she sometimes didn't even respond, and she seemed less interested in meeting. After a month, she told me that I either needed to marry her or move on, claiming she could find another guy easily and that I should be grateful to have her. This situation reminded me of past experiences, and even though I had feelings for her, I made it clear I wouldn't be pressured into marriage. We eventually decided to end the relationship. After another month, she started texting me again, and we got back together. It has now been 3 months, and she's returned to being her sweet self. She admitted it was wrong to say she could easily find someone else, claiming that I was the one for her all along. She expressed a desire to get married when I was ready, mentioning that her parents continued to push for it, but she was willing to wait. Despite liking her, I couldn't shake the feeling that her behavior might be an attempt to persuade me into marriage. Her tendency to switch between being sweet and distant so easily left me feeling uneasy. The day after I posted the original message, the thoughtful responses made me realize I should end things. It was a decision I probably should have reached without needing to seek advice. Last Saturday, I decided to break up with her. I called her that morning and explained that I couldn't handle the back and forth between being cold and affectionate, and that she should find someone who could commit to her timeline. I expressed that I didn't want to be pressured into marriage, and it hurt that she believed she was out of my league. I emphasized that I wanted to end things on good terms. She responded with anger, accusing me of never loving her and aiming her words at my insecurities, which I won't detail here. The conversation got heated, and although I tried to calm things down and end things amicably, she accused me of wasting her time. Soon after, she reached out again, suggesting we meet for a more productive conversation about our relationship. When I saw her, she looked better than ever, and we had a candid exchange of criticisms. I acknowledged her concern that I was too focused on work, while I pointed out that her remark about finding someone better was hurtful and inappropriate. She then showered me with compliments, saying I was the best person she had ever dated, and asked if there was any way to fix things. I told her that our relationship was beyond repair, but that I was glad we could end on better terms. To my surprise, she tried to initiate an intimate moment, something she had previously rejected. Surprisingly, it was even more intense than our previous encounters. Afterward, she suggested I take some time to reconsider if it was truly over, promising she would do whatever it took to make things right. I made it clear that I was done with the relationship, and I didn't want to be in a situation where I had to threaten to leave to be respected and loved. She started crying and said I had always been the one for her, even revealing that some of her friends had shown interest in me over the years, but she kept them away because she wanted me for herself. Despite Despite her emotional pleas, I stood my ground, and she eventually accepted that it was really over. Later, a friend sent me a screenshot of an Instagram story she posted for her close friends. I used to be on that list earlier in the week, but I guess I'm not anymore. The story was a rant, criticizing me for supposedly wasting her time and other grievances. I sent her one last message before blocking her, wishing her well and saying I hoped we could both move forward. Now, I feel free and look forward to finding someone who loves me for who I am and treats me with respect.